Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Hype for Black Enterprise. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP, Executive Editor at Large for Black Enterprise. And as always, we have a truly compelling conversation to get us beyond the hype. Listen, we know the post George Floyd era, we knew about all the commitments, the pledges made by corporations to do more in the space of equity and diversity and inclusion and belonging. And of course, the lexicon has become more expanded over the last couple of years since the pandemic. And what that has done is put renewed emphasis on what it means to communicate, to market to respect, to engage, to value Black consumers. So we're talking today with, I would say, the leading expert over the last 40 years on this idea of Black consumer marketing and how corporations should be talking with Black people, engaging with Black people. And I think our guests would agree that it's become a little bit more complex than it was 30 years ago. But listen, without further ado, let me introduce to you my friend. We both have shared the honor of co-hosting a show in Chicago called the Urban Business Roundtable on WVON. Um, Again, without further ado, Pepper Miller, president of the Hunter Miller Group and the author of the brand new book, Let Me Explain Black, Exploring Blind Spots and Black Insights for Marketing and Understanding Black Culture and Perspective. Talking about a book that is right for these times. Pepper,
Absolutely.
welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alfred. And we got to add that word on that last word again. Let me explain Black again. Not meant to be
Yes.
punitive, but it's just ongoing. Thank you so much, Alfred, for having me on the show, my friend and colleague. I really appreciate this.
Well, I want to build on that idea of again, because you really made it the strongest case of anybody I know for that. This is an ongoing conversation. This is
Yes,
not a period. This is a comma, and it is to be continued because we're talking about an evolving conversation, an evolving practice, an
that's right.
evolving expertise,
That's right.
both on the part of experts like you and companies that hope to really do best practices in this space.
That's right.
So this is your third book.
That's right.
Your first book is a classic that you co-authored with the late Herb Kemp, What's Black About It? And then later you said Black Still Matters in Marketing with your second book. And
Yes,
now we have Let Me Explain Black Again. Why
that's
don't we
right.
start this conversation by kind of sharing with my audience your journey to becoming Pepper Miller today, what made put you on this path professionally, why this became kind of your calling and your commitment to begin becoming an expert in this space.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think when I look back and pardon me, I mention it in some of my earlier works. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Lived here most of my life, but for 4.5 years, I lived with my family in the segregated South, Albany, Georgia. My father was a trained classical pianist. He got his undergrad in piano. He got his master's degree in theory. My father, late father, was born in 1927. So for the majority of my life, I've lived here in Chicago, born and raised in Chicago. But for 4.5 years, um, during segregation, my family moved to the South. My father accepted a professorship of music at Albany State College. It's Albany State University now. Um, and so that was culture shock. Coming from Chicago, I was about 6 years old, but to see coloreds not allowed, whites only. The Klan, we lived across the street from a big, big, big field. We used to call it the Ponderosa. And at a distance, you could see the Klan burning the crosses. But it was the lieutenant governor of Georgia, Lester Maddox. Who used the N word to refer to Black people who were trying to integrate one of the colleges or universities. And he was speaking to his cohorts, his constituents, white people protesting this. And he reassured them, him with his then crony, George Wallace. Don't worry, we won't let those niggas in. I don't know if I could say that on your network, but it had a profound impact on me. The pain of that still is here. The tears are still here. I could still feel that. And it left this indelible mark on my heart. And I didn't think about it, but I have long been thinking and wondering and paying attention to how we were treated and talked to. I worked at J. Walter Thompson, an ad agency, and learned about market research there. I didn't work in the research department, tried to get in it, was declined, and decided to leave the company. A friend of mine, a colleague and friend, decided to start a market research company, and that didn't last long. So I was going on my own, knocking on doors to get work. And when I showed up in this brown skin, I was told, "We'll call you when we have something black." And I was like, "You are you talking to me?" So it was the Burrell Advertising Agency. It was the Barbara Proctor agency, who's not here anymore, Proctor and Gardner. That agency is gone. E. Morris Communications is gone. The Chisholm Mingle Group is gone. But it was those agencies and Soft Sheen that gave me an opportunity to practice my craft. And I was doing focus groups, qualitative research, having conversations with Black people about what it means to be Black and how does that relate to the brand that we are testing or talking about in those groups. And I discovered this huge gap. I mean, I knew it was a gap, but just to hear Black people talk about the disconnect that they were having with a lot of these brands and the messages that were out there just propelled me to want to do something or say something. I started showing up at these multicultural conferences, and there was no one talking about the Black segment. No one. And if somebody did talk about the segment, it was the same information all the time. We are, 57% of the population lives in the South. These are the top 10 markets of the Black people. Black women are getting their degrees higher than Black men over and over again. And no one was asking why we do what we do, why we believe what we believe. And I adopted that. I am the why girl. So since then, that began my journey. And what I love that you talked about your calling, my mission, is to help large brands understand the value of Black as a people, as well as a market segment. Because we came here after we were forced here and became slaves, we are still fighting this cloud of stereotypes. A big part of our experience is countering stereotypes. I mean, it's what we do every day. And so, statements like she's playing the race card bothers me because it's always about race for us. When we walk out of our dwellings in this brown skin, it's on. And so that's why programs like yours, what Black enterprise brands like yours, and the programs and the number of programs and content that you have that you are putting out here, I'm just amazed at it. But it's so important because today we are living in the world of the great eraser. And so all of this is important, and it gives me fuel to writing these books and writing this third book. I want to quickly, answer to the four reasons why I this message is important today. Let me explain Black again. Number one, millennial growth in general. The millennials have surpassed boomers in terms of growth and size. And they desire a nation of equality because they're more diverse. They have a more inclusive mindset. And that's a key to politicians, that they need to change that. So that's part of the great erasure, motivations for it. And then Black millennials continue to demonstrate the Black community's progress. They're driving our progress, and they are embracing this attitude of authenticity by being unapologetic. I mean, a few years ago, I could not be on this program with a hairstyle like this. I could
True.
not present in front of an all white audience as I do today with a hairstyle like this. So I love that about our millennials. Second point, are three disruptors that I got from our good friend George Fraser, who Farser, this wonderful serial entrepreneur and
Yeah,
great
he's been a
networker.
guest
He
he's been a
mentioned,
guest on this show. So
oh, I
yeah.
love it. He mentioned the three, I don't know, areas. I call them the disruptors collectively: Trump, COVID, and George Floyd. It just changed the way we look at audiences. People are now forced to look at these audience differently. Black people, most of us think about being black 90% of the time versus white people that think about being white 10% of the time. As a result of those three disruptors, Trump, COVID, and George Floyd, we've seen an increase of mainstream thinking a little bit more about race. They have had an aha moment or an overdue awakening, as Time Magazine calls it. So that was the second motivator. A third motivator is I have had the opportunity to sit with agency strategists. Their job is to tell the story about Black people. They have to do research or they meet with research people to come up with the story because they are responsible for writing the creative strategy for any type of advertising or campaign. And I watched them struggle to find information about Black people, but importantly, to find information to counter clients that were constantly giving pushback, pushback, pushback. They speak English, don't they? Is a pushback, a rhetorical question that is really a rationale for not investing, for giving people pushback. So I wanted to make sure that they had this as a resource for that. And then finally, which speaks to the title, is four words that I've been hearing since I began this market research journey. Is pepper, I didn't know. Those four words follow my Black Insights presentation, a market research study, some workshops that we might be doing. So people would pull me to the side confidentially, white colleagues or people in the audience, and would say, I didn't know, or they send me an email. We hear those words even more today in this age of George Floyd and the great eraser. So those are the four reasons: the millennial growth, the disruptors, Trump, COVID, George Floyd, wanting to be a resource for strategic planners. Also, this validates Black people as well. And to respond to those four words, I didn't know. Pepper, I didn't know.
For our
Long
audience, I want you
answer.
great answer. I want our audience to know if you hear us talking about companies like the Burrell Advertising Agency, which is still a major force, but was among you just named some of the major pioneers and trailblazers in Black
That's wonderful.
advertising and the advertising industry. So we don't have time to take you all to school,
Right.
but you should definitely go and understand. I mean, Burrell Agency, I think you used this posted today. They went back to in person and office work post COVID today on the day of this our conversation. But those are agencies that if you don't know about them, you should, because they were a big part for particularly us as a Black-owned media outlet of the
Absolutely.
partnership that it took to help people to recognize the value of the Black consumer audience and to recognize the value of Black media.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about you already kind of touched on some of it, but on what let me back up a little bit. I've had a number of conversations over the last 2.5 years with corporate leaders, both in diversity, outside diversity, in marketing, a couple of people in HR, about this kind of, again, this post George Floyd DEI era. For example, one of the guests on this show is Tyrone Studemeyer from over at Hyatt, did
Yeah.
this great, kind of explanation to our audience of the whole evolution of the lexicon of this space. Once it was affirmative action, and it was called something else before that. It was called community relations at the very beginning,
Ah,
and then it kind of evolved, and it was really educational and insightful for our audience because it was among other things, it explained how this is an evolving conversation, and you come out post George Floyd, and you got really what I call three different groups in corporate America. Now you have group of corporations that has been at this for a while. You know, the McDonald's, the I think of another Xeroxes that have been in this space deliberately trying to be effective in this space. Then you got some newer companies that may have been only been doing this maybe 10 or 15 years pre George Floyd, but not really doesn't have deep roots in
That's
really
right.
understanding how to market and engage with black consumers.
That's right.
But they got some experience now. And now you have this whole new group of companies who had no real significant engagement with black consumers. Um, but because of George Floyd, now it's like, oh my God, we need diversity, we need to market, we need to engage. And whether they're doing it out of sincere commitment to change or they're doing it because they don't want to be seen as bad players in the space, but they have no experience. They don't even know which way is up yet,
That's
and
right.
of course, mistakes are being made.
Yes.
Gaffes are being committed, whether whether it's out of just insensitivity or just not knowing any better. It strikes me as really important to make clear that the work that you're doing yes, it's an important gift for us as black people to have someone say, "Let me explain," so you don't, so you can respect and honor these people. But it's really a resource that corporations really, really need if they're really going to understand how to do this in a way that doesn't not only honors and respects black people, but helps them to achieve their objectives
That's
to actually do business with us.
that's right. That's right. We like we're still fighting this, are we post-racial, are we not post-racial? I'm so interested in reviewing the Tyrone Stoudemire interview. What you just said about this evolution of where we were before DEI is very, very interesting, and it's important to tie that in even to my work. So I can't wait to listen to that.
Mm.
But the idea of our progress. We are making progress since civil rights. So a lot of brands in society, they look at, the Obamas, Barack and President Obama and former First Lady Michelle. They look at Alfred Edmonds. They look at the celebrities, maybe their boss, their direct report is a senior VP and a black person, and so they question, why are you, what are you talking about, not post-racial? What is it that you want more of? And that's one thing. Along with that, they're not understanding that black, brown, and poor people are still navigating broken systems. In terms of opportunity, we've had a funnel, and some people made it through the funnel. In terms of opportunity, for comparison's sake, mainstream whites have a 4-lane highway. And so they're not understanding that some people do get through the funnel, but it's not equity and it's not equality. As you know, equity means providing people the resources to help make them equal so that everyone is equal. Uh, a a new book that's out and everybody needs to read this book in a classroom. But what about the blind people in the classroom? So the blind people need the book to be in braille. Now they have an opportunity to be equal and everybody can be judged in that way. And so that's what a lot of business leaders are missing. And then the other point is why they hold on to this post-racial idea is that whole notion again. They speak English, don't they? Um, um, uh, Language has become the cultural identifier. So with Black people, because most of us in America speak English, they tend to roll us in with mainstream when you're thinking about a marketing or a DEI initiative. So it's the progress of Black people. It's seeing them seeing and experiencing Black people who have made progress, and then this language becoming the cultural identifier. So trying to break through and helping people understand that, along with what equity and equality means and what it really looks like. These are things that we're constantly fighting through um, on this battle for having more. And I'm hesitating here about acceptance and opportunities. I'm
Mm.
still kind of hesitating with that because I like the idea of being unapologetic about caring less about what mainstream is saying. And I think that's lives in Black enterprise. I mean, we go to them for sponsorship, but the message is ours. The narrative, we're controlling more of the narrative. So I want brands to see our value. At the same time, I want us to keep forging ahead, with this narrative and talking to each other and helping each other more, which is what I'm seeing more and more of since George Floyd.
You know, your point about our Black enterprise and Black media in general having a sense of mission that, like you said, all media companies have to some degree, not even some degree, all media companies, no matter what platform, your client are advertisers or
Yes,
sponsors, and whether you call them advertisers or sponsors or whatever partners, they're the people you're selling, if you will, the audience to,
yes,
in order to get the revenue you need to produce and distribute your content, whether that's a television show, a radio show, a printed product, newspaper or magazine, or digital, or even an event. And, we recognize events as a media platform. It's not just a social activity. So there's that. It's always that balance of making sure you deliver what the client wants, but the credibility of your audience to the client relies on the client's your audience's perception that you are being authentic and true to their needs and to who they are. In our case, to what Black people care about. And you're right. Our late great founder Earl Graves, Senior, and our current CEO Butch Graves is very adamant that no, this is what Black people need. This is what Black people in corporate America are experiencing. This is what Black entrepreneurs are trying to do, and that we understand that the minute we lose that credibility with our audience, the value of whatever advertiser or sponsor might sell goes away. Even if
absolutely.
what that sponsor wants us to do is to say, there's always that push and pull when this advertiser like, well, we want you to talk about this, and we're like, but our audience cares about that. So if you're serious about reaching this audience, you kind of have to accept them as they are. Um,
And
so
then,
this
and then, are you comfortable walking away from an advertiser if they want to dictate the narrative to you?
what I tell people, that's a question I answer a lot, especially when I'm talking to I'm mentoring a lot of other media entrepreneurs. Is it comfortable? No. But is it necessary? Yes, because once it becomes perceived by your consumers, your readers, your subscribers, that you actually are are not no longer serving their needs, they don't trust you anymore.
That's right.
And when they stop trusting you, they go away. And then what do you have to sell to the advertiser
That's
or the
right.
sponsor, or whatever? And so one of the things that I know at Black Enterprise back when we were a magazine, and we used to do, I don't know if you remember Mark Clements Research. That was one of the top magazine research companies back in the, probably until the 2000s, early 2000s. And one of the things that came out of research over the years, this is a research company that Mr. Graves was using long before I came to Black Enterprise. So they must have like a 40-year relationship. But was that Black Enterprise was considered the most trusted
Mm,
business media publication by by Black people. Like they may read Forbes, they may read Fortune, they may read Barron's, but they trusted Black Enterprise.
absolutely. And I'm
And,
sure
and that
that
goes to
that is
your
still
point that
true
Black people are
today.
not just brown skinned white people.
That's right, Tom
You know,
Burrell.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So this idea that yeah, Black people read Sports Illustrated and Black people watch mainstream TV shows and but if you, it's who we trust. It's
That's
what
right. We
it,
trust and embrace Black media. That's one of the
yes.
things I say over and over again. Again, language, cultural identifier. We don't need to. The other thing that Black media does too is it does not. I always see mainstream media often on the periphery. I think black media has this grassroots benefit that can penetrate and come right into our homes and our hearts in a way that mainstream media does not do. And I hate that, it's those kinds of benefits are not necessarily, I haven't seen measurable, because we've got this programmatic artificial intelligence media
Mhm.
buying going right now. But that's one of the benefits that I have seen with black media, the conversations that we have that mainstream media doesn't always get. Um, and so we do use, to your point, mainstream media, but the embrace of black media is so very important, and we just have to, I don't know how we do it, Alfred, but they're always, we're always faced with once we have satisfied a requirement, the rules change and
Yeah.
then we have to come up with more substantiation for what we do and for who we are. And so that's one thing that I would like to see us do, or maybe not do. Again, getting away
Right.
from trying to prove ourselves to those who don't get us or don't want to get us, is that's the exhausting part about being black. I love being black, but that's the exhausting part of being black, and it's also the exhausting part of this work as well. So I don't know what we do about proving the media value, the fact that it
Mhm.
uh, reaches and truly engages us in a different way. I don't know what Black Enterprise is doing in that respect, except telling the story over and over again, or telling a different story that helps substantiate that. How do you say, Alfred? What do we do?
Well, we already know that one of the at least one of the benefits of the very difficult transition into digital, which if we're being honest, while we're the here now, and it took a pandemic to kind of push us into a world where not just black people but all people said, okay, this is just the new way we engage. But it was basically a 10-15 year journey from being primarily a single magazine publishing company to what we are today, a digital and virtual and live events company. But in that interim, we had to come up with new ways to utilize digital technology to measure our audiences, to measure, like you said, not just where we live, I mean, the easy stuff, but
Right.
what we think, how we feel, why we respond to things, and then being able to package that in such a way to not only I think to your point, we're no longer trying to e- explain or justify why black
Yes.
people are the way they are.
Yeah.
Now it's more like, here's the price you pay if you don't learn how to engage this audience that's growing, that has more wealth than any previous generation before, that you ultimately want to do business with. And so it's no longer about convincing you to do business with this market the way it was for Mr. John Johnson Publishing, and even for Earl Graves and Ed and Smith and Clarence Smith and Ed Lewis when they started Essence,
Yes.
and countless others media entrepreneurs who literally had to make a case for, no, black people drink things besides liquor and they drive things besides Cadillacs, and you need to talk to them. Now it's more they understand that, but it's helping them again to accept black people as we authentically are,
Yes.
in all our beauty, all of our diversity, and understanding how to leverage that in the way. And if you can do that and then deliver on the campaigns, that because their ultimate goal is still to sell products or services,
Absolutely.
and so the goal is to create that what we call solution oriented media that
Mm.
presents our audience full value, authentic, and then says, and if you can engage with them, which is why your book is so important. I'm so glad you were able to come on this show. They need tools to understand how to engage the audience effectively, to not only respect that market, but to actually value that market and
Absolutely.
value it because of the results that they get on the bottom line when they got to explain, the ad campaign they purchased or the event they sponsored or whatever the digital campaign they paid. So you're right, but it's not. it's not like a short, easy. Oh,
It's
we
not
solved that. Let's move on. It's an ongoing um,
absolutely.
conversation if you want to stay in business
I
and continue
love
to serve your
I love
audience.
the idea of solution oriented media. I love that, Alfred.
Well, that traces right back to our founder Earl Graves. It's like
That
what we're
says a
really here
lot.
to do is to
I didn't put that in the book, but
help black people solve problems and take advantage of opportunities. That's what we're really here to do.
that's you know what, and I will give him credit because that's a great headline for um, in my Black Insights presentations when I
Oh,
talk
thank you.
about Black media. It's that because that is exactly what it is today. It's exactly what you guys do, and I think collectively that's what Black media does.
Yes, yes.
It
Tell
absolutely.
tell me what has changed. Again, you wrote "What's Black About It," which does kind of mirror what I said in the beginning. Was like, okay,
Well,
you know,
you know
you
that
know,
was,
and
and then
then
Black
you went
Still
through
Matters.
Black Still Matters in marketing because they got to a point where it was like, oh, maybe we call it the post affirmative action age, and like you said, we're good. We don't really need to know this stuff. It doesn't matter anymore.
That's right.
And now we have let me
That
explain black. What has changed for the better or maybe for the not so good in between when you wrote or co-wrote the first book with Herb Kemp and what your experience with writing Let Me Explain Black today, so many years later?
No, I guess the biggest, well, the first book, What's Black About It, was 2003 or 4. There was no social media as we know it today. No
Mm,
iPhone, no iPad, no constant contact. No Facebook, none. I think MySpace was about. And there wasn't a book written, an insights book written about us. I think the last one before What's Black About It was a book by D. Park Gibson, who was a Black researcher back in the day. And the book that he wrote was, I think it was in 1976, and it was the $69 million Negro. So that was the last Black Insights book. So we needed something that was foundational that talked about, again, how we are, um, uh, you know, how we're different but not deficient. We're different, but
right.
not deficient. So that was the message. Foundational. I think we had paragraphs on Black enterprise. We had on different media. We had even a directory of here's Black media, here's Black agencies, because we kept hearing that. Well, I don't know what Black media is out there. I don't know what magazines. Really, Essence, Black, and really, Jet.
Right.
I don't know, and I don't know where the Black agencies are, and I don't know where the Black research companies are. So we included a directory, as much information as we could have then. And I think you're right. Black Still Matters in marketing. We were in the era of the Obama administration. And we were in the era of total market, which was basically looking at the driving segment, the segment that was driving behavior. And you're supposed to look at that segment and then take the insights from that segment and apply them to other segments. And the segments that you were particularly should be looking at was multicultural. And that never happened. It was really a snatch and grab, snatch from Black agencies, give to mainstream agencies, snatch from Black media, give the dollars and budgets to mainstream media, shut down the multicultural centers of excellence within the companies. It was that. I was like, oh my God. And then now with George Floyd's murder, a light bulb has gone on. But at the same time, Black people have been evolving. Um, I love again, going back to being unapologetic and beginning to care less and embracing who we are. We've got the Crown Act that helps us, wear our natural hair in the workplace without being reprimanded for it. We've got more of the FUBU effect. FUBU, as you know, the clothing
Yes, the founded by Damon John and his
Amy,
partner.
thank you.
Yep, yep.
But that has taken on a whole movement now, for us, by us. Black people have been supporting Black businesses like crazy, and
Yes.
they're opening up and being a lot more sustainable than they've ever before. I can't tell you how many emails or telephone calls and text messages that I get every week looking for a Black cleaners, a Black doctor, a Black plumber, a Black dentist, a Black whatever, fill in the blank. I've been getting more and more of that. So there's this for us, by us movement that has been going on since the time of the first book, and people really caring about who they are. And now we are discussing more. What's also happened too, we're discussing more and been disenchanted with the great erasure, of erasing our culture. And I talk about it to these white audiences. I talk to them about not falling for the okey doke, that peaceful protesting is not anti-white. Taking a knee is not anti-white, anti-flag, or anti-America. Being woke is about being aware of the racial inequalities and disparities that have happened, particularly with Black and brown people, to be aware of those things, those issues. It is not anti white, anti flag, and anti American. So, those are also things that we are discussing in our community. The importance of controlling the narrative. That, I think, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, values of Black media, because it allows us to do that in this era of the great eraser. And for our audience, when you talk about the eraser, it is this erasing our history. I think there are laws that are taking effect where history comes out of the history book, definitely in Florida, in Utah, in Tennessee, and Texas. There's been a big movement to erase Dr. Martin Luther King from these books, and Malcolm X and others who we look up to. The people that push this agenda say it makes they're saying that it hurts their children. They're saying that it makes the founding fathers look bad as well. And then they're changing the narrative about what slavery, the impact that it was on us, that Black people wanted that. So that's the story that's going out now. And so how we've evolved from what's Black about it to now is this push to be aware of all these things, the importance of Black media, controlling the narrative, supporting our own businesses, being unapologetically Black, um, and telling more positive stories about the Black community. Constantly being aware that we need to constantly refute these stereotypes. It's been a cloud that has covered us and our community since slavery, because everything about us has been negative. And so I talk to Black people often. I do not put down young people. They're doing great. They're galvanizing themselves. I do not put down Black men. Yes, there are Black men in prison, but the prison system is broken. And I'm not saying that people that make bad decisions should not be punished and reprimanded for that. But we know that system is
No,
is
you make a great point. Actually, you made a couple of great points. I'm going to point
yes,
out two of them. And I say this all the time: Black people and Black men in particular are the only groups that are defined by our dysfunction.
absolutely.
Meaning, like every group has a certain degree of dysfunctionality, but we're the only ones that it starts out with Black people are dysfunctional, and then those of us who are not dysfunctional, or dysfunctionality does not make up the majority of our identity, that's like it's treated as the exception to the rule, where the dysfunctionality is the exception to the rule.
I
We're the
love
only group in America
I
where
love
the
that.
dysfunctionality is treated as the rule and our functionality is treated as the exception, when we know that it's the exact opposite, just like it is with most people.
Well said, Alfred.
Yeah,
Well
I mean
said.
that was the whole premise behind when we launched our Black Men Excel Summit, and we say Black Men Excel. If you want, that we celebrate the fact that most Black men, in most situations, in most conditions, excel
Absolutely.
despite the forces of race against us. The,
Absolutely. We
the
we
other thing,
become That's go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is really important as we kind of come down the home stretch of our conversation is it certainly is true post George Floyd. We now have black people in general and younger black people in particular, and black Twitter is probably one of the best social media examples of this, that's totally ready to hold companies accountable for when they
Absolutely.
step left, they go left, they do something like immediate response. And I think that change in the social fabric of America and black America in particular is the biggest reason. The George Floyd murder may have been the tipping point, but the willingness of black people and younger black people, I would say Gen Z and younger, to call them out immediately.
That's
That's
right.
wrong. That was racist. What do you mean? That's and companies having to say they're not going to just grumble amongst themselves and be mad about it. They're going to actually do something about it. They're going to do something about it where they spend their money. They're going to do something about what they say about our brand, and that kind of black consumer power. But it's not that we've never exercised it before. That's what the Montgomery bus boycott was about. So it's not that we've never done it before,
Right.
but now it just seems like with this generation of black consumers, younger black consumers, and I think us older black consumers are kind of following their lead. Is
Yes.
now we're willing to say, nah, I don't see you sponsoring any black events. I don't see your brand in black media. Therefore, I don't need to be paying attention to you. So I think the younger black people are a lot. Not only are they have we leaned into supporting and starting black-owned businesses and supporting one another, we've also become a lot more serious about we know who our friends are,
Yes.
not by what's in the ad and not by that there's black people in the commercial, but by what they're actually doing in our communities and what they're doing on our issues. And
We
we also know who's not our friends, and we are
we
willing as black consumers to act accordingly. And I think that's a new thing. Corporate America is like, oh no, they're not playing with us. No, they're
We
not
just
playing no
elected
more.
a black mayor, Brandon Johnson, who
Hmm.
was totally not on anybody's radar, and that motivation came from the black millennials. Oh,
Yes.
and the some of the white millennials too, but the 18 to 35-year-olds.
Yeah, because they're much more likely, I think, than I'm a baby boomer. So let's say baby boomers and older to not only take action but feel empowered to do so.
Yes.
Like they don't think anything of it. Sometimes we might call them, they're a little vocal and entitled. They're like, nah, I'm not here for any of that. you
Yes.
know. But
Yes.
that plays out in how they act as consumers. Again, not just black millennials, like you say. I think it's younger,
Young people in general.
millennials and Gen Z in general, because what we saw in 2020 was a lot of young white people and non-black people saying, I'm coming out here. We're not taking this, and that
Absolutely.
plays out in terms of it's not just what we see on TV when there's a protest on the street that makes the news. When there's no protest on the street, we tend to protest with our choices,
Yes.
where we spend our time, where we spend our dollars, where we put our attention. And I just think younger black consumers are doing a better job than I think at any time in history of holding corporate America accountable for its
And
behavior.
galvanizing the rest of us to follow
Yes,
suit. You're
yes,
absolutely right, and I
yes,
tell my black people that too. Pookie and Ray Ray are real when you look out the window there on the corner, but many black people are that's what they're doing is galvanizing themselves and not being on the corner, but they're online. Black Twitter, you're right, it has the power, the Midas touch to elevate a brand or it can take you down.
yep, yep.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so Pepper, in the time that we have left, I really do want you to talk about what ultimately you want this latest book to accomplish. Who should be reading it, both in corporate America and the larger population as a whole, and why this book is important for right now, given all the things that we've talked about during this conversation.
Ah, thanks, Albert. I think having people to stop, particularly those that are not black, to stop and be a little bit more introspective, to begin with why. to ask yourself why feeling, I wonder why this happened, instead of the knee jerk reaction to stop this or to throw people in jail or to erase Black history. Why is Black history important to Black people and to me? So being, being introspective and looking at them, and then taking that mirror and looking at themselves too a little bit more, and asking what their part is, and what part do they play. Not saying anything about injustices too makes one culpable as well. So I want, at the very least, I want people, reading this book, to do that. I want Black people to continue to be validated by it, that you have value, you are valuable, you have too a different way of thinking and talking about this culture. You can control the narrative by telling your stories to your children, to yourself, and to your non-Black constituents. And then I think the importance of embracing truth, and authenticity, and what did you say? And trust.
Mhm.
Trust is so important. And looking at what that really looks like. I want people to I don't know, think deeper, and to realize that Black people are safe, that we are smart, that we are loving, that we are positive contributors to society. Those sound bites in the news that happens for other segments as well. But to ask themselves, what about the others? I mean, if two Black men robbed a grocery store, what about the Black men who have not robbed the grocery store? What about white men who rob the grocery store? There's Black on Black crime, white on white crime, Asian on Asian. We found a stat that said 62% of Black people commit Black on Black crime versus 57% of whites who who commit white on white crimes against each other.
Right.
That's a 5% point,
Right.
percentage difference, not 100. So you got to start asking yourself some questions and start flipping some things around. But to begin with why, and asking yourself questions, is very, very important to me, and what I want the outcome of this book to do for all the readers.
So, what is the best way? And one of the things about this show is that we always know that we can't really, you're not going to solve or explore any topic in an hour and get through it all. So it's a conversation that continues. I always say every episode of Beyond the Hype it ends with a continuation of the conversation, and what people do after they listen to a show or go to one of our events is determines the success of that interview or the event. What's the best way for people to? Obviously, they should get the book.
Yes.
I'm telling you guys now. Get "Let Me Explain Black Again" by Pepper Miller. Just go ahead and
So
order it right now. Yep, it's hot off the presses. But what's the best way for people to stay in touch with what you're doing? Social media. I don't know if you have
yes.
a podcast. What's the best way for people to kind of stay on
Well,
top of what
my
you're
my
sharing?
website is my name, peppermiller.net. They
Mm.
can connect with me there. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, Pepper Miller. They can follow me on Twitter, Pepper Miller, Facebook, Pepper Miller, and Instagram is Pepper Miller 40. My Instagram is a little raggedy. We're working on it. We're working on it. I got my young millennial helping me with that. But if you just Google me, you can find me and you can connect with me. I am very accessible. When people reach out and want to have a chat, I have no problem. I just, you got to have your questions together. It's not about picking my brain. It's about you really wanting to understand something. So I give people an opportunity to do that, especially young people, because I love young people.
And before you wrap, what is your message for corporate America? And I kind of want to look at it
Ooh,
in two ways. Corporations that have been leaning into this conversation for a while, like I said, now we've been around long enough that there are some companies and brands that have been leaning into this for a while, but even they would admit that they still have a lot more to learn because things have changed. and then this other group that is totally new to this game, that they are really just finally starting to lean into engaging Black consumers in a really authentic manner. What would be your message to each of those two groups, broad groups that make up, corporate America, is corporations, whether they're doing it because they really believe it or they're doing it for lip service, are saying we want to do and be different. We want to re-examine systems both inside, but certainly we want to improve the way we relate to Black people outside of or the
Mhm.
walls of our company.
I think coming to the table with a desire to understand is important. We printed these books because I spoke at these research conferences last week and week before last. One in Charlotte, one in Chicago, and I had Burrell yesterday and American Express. So we needed some books to put in people's hands. But this desire to understand, and I kept asking people that would buy the book, and I autographed it, particularly non-Black people, why are you buying this book?
Mhm.
And they said, because I want to understand. So coming to the table with a desire to understand is important just across the board. The second thing is consistency, a consistency of understanding, a consistency of investing in this segment for the long term. And investment means investing in Black media, in Black research, Black advertising, being consistent with that, making sure that you have Black people on your team. Not necessarily people of color. People of color is the collective group: Black, African American, Asian, Hispanic. That's fine. But to have a Black person on your team that understands Black culture and has a connection with Black people is important. We don't often think about Black people as being assimilated, but some of our millennials and younger people are assimilated. As boomers and Gen Xers, we moved to the suburbs, and our kids are being raised in predominantly white environments. It's not a criticism, it's an observation. But the assimilated person on your team does not have the same passion that a Pepper Miller or Alfred Edmonds or someone that was raised in the Black community and wants to tell our story would have. So that's something we need to be careful of. And then to have consistent investments too, if I didn't make that clear, and not just investing in a one-off and then it's expecting your sales to skyrocket as a result of that just because you have never invested before. It takes time to build a relationship, and that should be part of the consistency, is building a relationship. And it's not easy, it doesn't happen overnight, but those are some of the things I would say just across the board to both groups of people, Alfred. And I'm sure I'm missing something important, but those are things that are top of mind in the moment.
No, you hit one of the most important points that we in Black media have had to make throughout the existence of Black media, which is it's about building a relationship.
Yes,
It's not, if it's transactional, this is not just between media companies and corporations. This is between people. You know the difference between a transactional relationship where you do your deal and you never talk again, and you don't give us so much out of that, versus no, I am in a relationship with you. We're going to build on what we're doing to
that's
bear
right.
fruit over the long haul. And I'm fortunate to have been doing what I do for a living long enough that obviously I went from being just an editor writing articles to being a senior executive in the media business that often accompanies our sales staff to talk with clients and
That's great.
interface with clients. And we say to them, do you want a relationship with our audience? Do you want a relationship with Black Enterprise? Because
Yes.
a relationship is not a one off.
No, it's not.
A relationship
It's
that says,
long.
no, we're going to do this. We have a shared goal, shared objectives. There's things you want to get out of it. There's things we want to get out of it. But our audience wants to know that you are really committed to a relationship with them, not a hit it and quit it. And I didn't get what I wanted, so I'm never going to go back again.
And adding to the relationship, I hate seeing the Black agencies struggle. What's been happening is they are given assignments today instead of the business.
Right.
So, they have to go in and pitch, and then you have an assignment, and when that's over, you're done. Instead of of leading. And my question to a lot of big companies have been, when are Black agencies going to have an opportunity to lead, to have an entire piece of business, a $200 million piece of business, just like the mainstream agencies? They would do the same thing mainstream agencies would do in terms of staffing up. But, we have our feet in both worlds. I mean, and it would be ideal for a company to give the business to a Black agency, because we understand many worlds, or at least both worlds, the Black and white world, because we have to. And the fact that we could lead with Black insights, because when you get it right with Black people, you ultimately get it right with mainstream as well.
Yes.
So those are some of the opportunities as well that these companies need to understand, and to step up and have the courage to step up and provide those types of opportunities for themselves, as well as for Black businesses and advertising agencies and media companies in particular.
And to your point, I think you touched on it a couple of seconds ago. It's not just having brown people at the table, so you can say have brown or Black people at the table. Does that person have a voice? Does that person have authority?
Yes, yes,
If we're talking, is that person in leadership?
yes,
Because that's
yes.
often we're like, yeah, there was a Black person in the room, but either their thoughts were not taken seriously or they weren't there to talk. Just be happy
I
you're
have
in the
been
room.
there when I was at J. Walter Thompson. I have
Yeah.
been told when I was in the meeting, and just don't you say a word. I mean, I didn't even know I could. I was like devastated, keep your mouth closed, because I knew I had points of view about certain things. And that was back in the day, in the early 80s. Just shut up,
But
don't
again, it
say
still
anything.
happens. They're still they're like they again we want diversity. We want to look diverse.
Yes.
We want, when we come to the meeting, we want to look around the table and say, "Oh, we're doing a good job because look, we have one of each around the table. We're diverse." But if it's not, I guess it goes back to your point about equality. Might mean, yeah, everybody's in the room, but equity is mean everybody has a voice.
Everybody's doing it.
It's
Equality
yeah,
is the promise, and equity is the action. That you're
yes,
giving people the opportunity to get what they need to get in order to be equal. And
and to
equality
give
is
what they have to give, because there's nothing
exact.
worse than being a professional in the room and you experience and being told you're not really here to contribute anything. Just
Exactly.
sit here and be quiet. And
Exactly. I know you did all this work and you know this, but don't say anything, because you're going to show up your boss, or you're going to
right.
show up the senior leaders.
Or you're going to
So,
create some uncomfortable conversations about what you did with that campaign that Black people are like, I can't believe you did that. You know,
absolutely.
listen, we
Absolutely.
could go on and on and
Yeah, we
on, but
can. Alfred,
Pepper,
I love you. Thank you so much.
I love
Thank
you
you so
back.
much. Thank you
I
so
know,
much.
I can't wait to see you again soon. I'll
Yep.
be in Chicago soon. And I
Well,
just
sister,
thank
we
you
can
for
go out
making,
and have a couple of drinks or something. I
oh,
love
we're gonna make it do what it do. We're gonna make it happen.
Absolutely.
But I'm so glad you took the time to be my guest on this
Happy to
edition of
be
Beyond
here.
the Hype.
Happy to be here. I love the title. It fits so much of the work that I'm doing. I love it. This is great, great conversation. Thank you, Alfred.
This has been another great edition. You know, I always deliver with my guests of Beyond the Hype. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP, Executive Editor at Large at Black Enterprise. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time.